And I think I probably had a really good life up to probably 15, where I lost my dad. And I think I always say, or I've learned, I think if you want to trust your gut, told me, don't be such a woman and don't read the job description. Just go for it.
Hello grown-ups, and welcome to this week's episode of A Beginner's Guide to Being a Grown-Up, where we interview Barbara Gottardi, who's been a Chief Information Officer turned entrepreneur and a leader in finance technology. She is the CEO and founder at Finbridge Global, which connects fintechs and financial institutions. Barbara takes us through her journey of life and its ups and downs, including the loss of her father in her teens and the impact it had on her, and her career journey that took her from Italy to Dublin to the UK and the starting of her own fintech. So join me in welcoming her to the podcast this week. So Barbara, tell me a little bit about your journey into adulthood.
So my journey started in Italy. So I grew up in Italy, and I think I probably had a really good life up to probably 15, where I lost my dad. And I think that's probably what shaped up the kind of my character, the rest of the life. And I think, and interestingly enough, I think some of the stuff I only realized it now that my kids are pretty much the same age when I kind of lost my dad.
Wow.
But I think my mum was amazing. My mum ended up going back to work, and she was a nurse. And she never, let us miss anything, and she did everything for us. But I think for me, it was the almost acceleration into life to be sure I needed to be independent, because I didn't want to weigh onto her. So I went to university, even if for me was, should I really go to university? And she said, you must go to university. And I think I did it a bit in a rush. The Italian system is you get grades, and you kind of try and get, the top grade. And if you don't like the grade, you go and retake the exam. And that was definitely not my plan. My plan was to just try and do the exam as best as I could and just get out of there. And I think I did, I discovered traveling through the Erasmus project. I went to Denmark for 6 months, and I loved it. And I think I got the bug for traveling. So when I finished university, I actually didn't know what I wanted to do, but one of the things I knew, I didn't want to work in Italy because it would have been unpaid and not very kind of satisfactory. So I packed my bag and I left, and I landed in Dublin. So I landed with my suitcase, spent a few nights in a hostel until I met a friend and I found an apartment. And I literally went around when CVs were still printed, went around and distributed the CV. I started working in a call center at the beginning. I thought I could speak English, and I realized that Irish is a totally different language. So I learned that. And I think from there, I spent 2 years in Dublin. I was transferred with the company into London. My idea was, it was just a hop over back to Italy. I met a British husband, and I'm still here. So in the UK, I moved to work for Reuters for a bit, and then I started HSBC in 2004, and I ended up staying at HSBC for 16 years. So I guess that's what really shaped up my career, my life, where I am, where I met probably the best bosses, the worst bosses, made a lot of friends, and learned a lot. From there, I left to become the CIO for Vanguard Europe, and that was probably one of the most difficult decisions to make. And I consider myself to be quite a decisive person, and I definitely wasn't at that time. And then life take you in a different direction, or throw you a curveball that you don't know what to do with. And my mum started not to be well, so the commute started again, trying to manage something here, family, kids, and going to Italy. So I decided I couldn't do it, and I had to make a choice. So I went into consulting, just because I knew I could get paid when I work, and I didn't get paid when I couldn't work. Knowing myself, I just didn't need that kind of feeling guilty if I was trying to do too much. And then I did corporate life, I did consultancy, I needed entrepreneurship, and that's when I started Finbridge Global. And now I think I've ticked all the boxes. And I think that's where I am now. But the learning curve has been super steep. And I think I've probably got to know myself much more trying to run a business than actually being in a corporate.
Yeah, it's a very different life being an
Yes.
entrepreneur to being in a corporate, isn't it? So any particular reason you ended up with Dublin? Just fancied it, or?
It was at the time the Celtic Tiger, where they were actually looking for people with European languages.
Okay.
So I ended up doing customer service on Italian, French, and kind of English at the time. I think my English got improved while there, let's put it that way.
Yeah, absolutely. So what, obviously, with your mum not being well and having to kind of get a bit more control over what you could and couldn't do and your life and managing kids and families, and what was the kind of biggest trigger then to start your own business, to take all of that knowledge and start your own business?
I think I was an ad in a company which was part of the, if you want, a non-profit. They tried to do something that I've now taken on. And I tried to work with them, but then realized that, having coming out corporate where, you kind of need to learn how to navigate to get things done. I could have not done the same, and you can't be a fintech, a startup, being linked to a non-commercial organization. I think it just doesn't work.
Yeah.
And so I said, why no? I can give it a go. And that's where I started. The problem is you probably, when you start out from kind of a relatively successful career and you get quite high in an organization and you think, people recognize what you've done, but clearly I was so wrong because people tell you, you don't look like an entrepreneur. You've never done one before. How can you possibly know?
Yeah.
And so, you kind of need to almost put everything away and start from scratch. And that requires a lot of resilience and a lot of determination.
Yeah, absolutely. And possibly resilience you learn, as you said, when you were younger, wanting to take the load off your mum a little bit, that you learn as a teenager, that you probably didn't realise
it's true
what that would turn into. So obviously 15 would have been a very, very pivotal year for you and quite hard for you and your family and for your mum. And I'm assuming in Italy you go to university at 18?
Yes.
So you'd have been just off to university when you turned 18. What was it you wanted to do? Did you have like a clear ambition at 18, or you just knew you wanted to go to university?
So the first question is, shall I go to university or shall I go to work? And I think my mum strongly answered that question. You have to go to university. So that wasn't a choice. And then it became to do what? And I think my choice was almost by exclusion. So I'd kind of done
the worst ways.
Yes, I did languages at high school, but I knew I didn't want to do languages because it was just kind of history and that didn't interest me. Probably looking back, I should have gone for engineering, but I went for economics, which was a good bit of, maths and economics and a mix of everything, which I thought, I don't really know what I want to do. At least I keep my options open and I do a bit of everything. So, yeah, that was my university.
And so if you reflect back then to that 18-year-old self, wasn't sure wanted to go to uni, mum was very clear, wasn't quite sure what you wanted to do and kind of picked a subject you thought would be useful but maybe wasn't your passion. What would your 18-year-old self recognise in you if she could see you today?
So well, in my head, I'm still 18, probably. Even if today is my birthday, so I'm a day older, but I will not disclose the age.
No, 18 again. We'll stick with 18 again.
18 again. So I definitely haven't lost that, if you want, determination. I think, as you said, if I wanted to do something, I was going to go and do something. But I think I was probably a bit more kind of shy and less sure of what I could really achieve. And I think through the year, as you said, through experience, through rejections, through failures, to everything that the life throws at you, I think you realize you're probably stronger than you think you are. And there's a lot of things you can do. And I think for me, one of the pivot thing was, and I know maybe this sounds really stupid, but being able to leave Italy. And I think if you grow up in Italy, you know how family is
Mm-hmm.
important, how strong. But to be able to go to Copenhagen on my own at, 19 years old and kind of do the Erasmus and stuff, which I think, now I think my kids they're just so used to be without us and do their own things. But I think at that time I found it
Yeah.
was quite challenging, but that gave me the confidence that if I could do that for 6 months, then I could do much more. And, looking back, I think going to Ireland, Dublin, just with the luggage and stay in a hostel for 3 nights, I was like, oh my God, how did you do that? But I did it, and that was probably one of the best decisions I did.
Yeah. I think that's really interesting, the kind of that early tenacity, as you say, that she'd probably recognise of, I'll give it a go. If I can do this, then that means I can do something else. Like if I can go to Copenhagen and survive and thrive, that means there's something bigger out there that I can go and do. So that's clearly what she would have recognised in you. What would she have been absolutely blown away by?
So I think I'm quite active now, kind of social media, on trying to help and stuff and be out there public speaking where I can. I don't think that was on the cards. I think that's I think surprised myself and surprised, probably keep surprising, I think.
Yeah.
And also I think I used to be probably quite shy and not saying very much.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I now probably say too much and say it as it is. But I think in the longer term, and kind of, I think that's the best way to be. You don't need to remember what stories you told someone. That's what you said, and that's what it is. And I think you also get to a point where you want to get to much quicker. And I think I met last week. I was at Money 2020, and there was this guy trying to be very smooth and stuff. And I said, "Look, this is where I am. This is where we can be." And he was like, "Oh my God, you've gone through a tough time." And I said, "There's no point on wasting each other's time.
Yeah.
So let's get to the point."
Yeah. Well, don't worry, because oversharing and over talking is like requirement 101 for the podcast. So you're in the right space. So that's brilliant. And I think that's really interesting. Like, at 18, she'd have recognised that tenacity, but actually you were a much shyer, quieter person. And some of those things you've done over the years have really formed you to have that confidence to just kind of be who you are and say how it is.
Yes. And I think I don't know how you feel, but I think then growing up and having kids as well, I think you then feel a responsibility, because I don't think I'm a role model. I don't think I am saying anything to anyone, but actually you realize that people are looking at you. And so what you want to is actually inspire and get more people to have a go and give it a go, because I think there's too many people thinking in their head, "Oh, I will never be able to do it, I can't do it." And I think keep thinking in your head, you'll make a problem much bigger than it is. And just talking to someone, you realize that actually it's not that bad, and there's a lot more you can do. And you can have a go, and if it doesn't work, it doesn't work, but at least you'll never live with the regret that you haven't tried.
Yeah. And it's really interesting you say that. That is a real common theme of the people that I interview, which is just throw yourself at something and learn what works and what doesn't. And that takes me very nicely. So you've lined me up brilliantly. Thank you, Barbara. To my next question, which is, what's the biggest failure that has formed you? The kind of the biggest shift you've had to make that's really formed who you are today?
I don't actually think there is one. I think there's many failure, and I think failure could be a disaster, but I think you look back and how many times you've kind of gone for a job and you didn't get the job. How many times you and I have been HSBC. How many times have you been through a reorg in HSBC and your seat ended up not in the right seat and you kind of need to do it? So you look back and it's like, geez, there's a lot. But I think you learn. You can take it two ways. You can take, you know what? Can I swear? No. Things happen. Shit happens, and you've got two ways of doing it. You can cry over yourself and you can leave and you can just be a victim. Or you can say, it wasn't meant to be. I'm going to use this and I move on and stuff. And I think I do things that probably the best, if you want failure, has been the last 18 months trying to raise capital and trying to go through the pitch presentation. And I think that's been probably one of the most forming
Okay.
situation. And it's been interesting because you end up pitching to people that are sometimes half your age, but they
Hmm.
think they know way more than you do, and you kind of don't fit there. So you pitch to people that as soon as they see you, you can see their
Hmm.
face dropping, and you're like, great. But I think one of the, how do you say, superpower I think that I've learned is I've actually been able to completely detach the emotion, if you want, and actually step back and write down and actually take notes on every single feedback they could do.
Okay.
Now, sometime I leave it for a few days until I actually digest it and I've gone over my emotions. And, being Italian, apparently you've got a lot of passion. That's what I've been told. But they're going back and actually read through things that people have said. And if you take all the emotions away, I think it's so powerful to actually say, do you know what? Few people have said the thing. Forget who said it, how it was
Hmm.
said. There is something that we can improve, or the message is not landing. And that. So I
I
think,
think that's
yeah,
so powerful. I think that's so powerful, isn't it? Which is, I can't think of a better phrase than the feedback's not personal. And I think we take stuff personally, don't we? But you're right. Learning the ability to just separate yourself from the feedback, that actually if you're getting something consistently, whether it's something you recognize in your pitch, your business, yourself,
yeah.
if you're getting it consistently, there's something there. So you need to take that reflection and just take out the emotion and go, is this something I recognize? Can I see it? Do I want to change it? Because actually it might be impacting on what I'm trying to achieve. I think it's a really interesting approach.
And you get some feedback, and some stuff is like, well, great, that was one view. And I think for people that know, and I think this is both in corporate and in entrepreneurship, where you're trying to do some slides, call it a presentation or a pitch.
Mm.
Everybody's got a freaking opinion on which slide should be first and how it should look like and stuff. So you get to a point where you're like, any feedback on the content, I'm okay. Which slide should go
Mm.
first or second or third? Just make a decision and move on. But
Yeah.
that's simplifying what it is,
Yeah.
and I think it is. But I think and maybe this is in some of you're in a lot of women's network and stuff. I think sometimes we just need to be careful because there's a behavior of being so defensive if a
Hmm.
man make a comment about you because probably was not packaged in the right way. But I think trying to go back and all men are bad and everybody's like that and it's a person, I think it's the wrong thing.
Mm.
So sometimes as well, just have a think, remove the package, have a look at what he said. And sometimes people are actually being helpful. And maybe there
Mm.
is something about perception that you can learn how to change. And it's definitely not personal. Or it is in a very extreme cases, I think.
Yeah. And even if it is, there's nothing you can do about it, right? So you take the emotion out of it. I think that's such a powerful thing. And you said it's a bit like your superpower. And I really think it is to kind of just look at the facts as they are and think and reframe it to, I might have felt really horrible in the moment, they're being really judgy, but actually what irrelevant of who's saying it and how that feels, it might be really useful. And learning to do that is kind of helps you be really successful. During your career, you'll have had to make lots of decisions, I'm sure. So life and career, obviously big decision to kind of leave Italy, go to Dublin, go to Copenhagen, then to move from Dublin to London. All of those are quite big life decisions. Marrying a Brit.
I know. He's there doing Italian because he needs to get an Italian passport because we're fed up of waiting for him at the border control.
So tell me, out of all of those so far, what's the best decision you've made?
I do think, well, as it feels now, I think coming out of corporate, it
Okay.
was the right decision for me. It was the right decision because I was able to be there with the kids when they needed me, be there with
Hmm.
my mum when she needed me, and being able to find out more about myself to actually being able to be where I am now and to kind of keep
Hmm.
pushing forward. It wasn't easy, and I think, through the last couple of years, there are mornings I woke up and I was like, oh, can I just get a bloody normal job and go back to at
Yeah.
least you know what you need to do. But then there's a lot of things that I would have not been able to do, and I would have sacrificed. And I think life is too short, and I think you look back, and I think I would have regretted it. So I'm quite, things happen for a reason.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I always say, or I've learned, I think if you want to trust your guts. And I was listening to a podcast recently where there is something about your stomach and the nerve that is linked to your brain.
Completely.
And now I just sometimes when I'm speaking to people or when I do, I just get that sense if it's the right thing or not. And, you know, with my co-founder, when we talk, he, you know, it's like, what do you think? And I was like, I've just got that feeling. I don't think it's right. And I can't explain you, but I don't think it's right. And now even him said, well, if you don't think it's right, we're not doing it.
I think there's a lot to be said when you're right. There is lots of research between the real like physical connection between your brain and your gut. And that comes up quite often when I interview people, that the importance of being able to listen to something that you inherently know is either right or wrong. Over the years as well, I'm sure you've been given lots of advice, probably given lots of advice, good advice, bad advice. What's the best piece of advice that you've been given that you chose to ignore?
Gosh, this is hard. So the best piece of advice, which I initially ignored, but then I didn't, it's probably was from someone at HSBC who I still admire very much, who told me, don't be such a woman and don't read the job description. Just go for it, because a man wouldn't do that. And initially I said, oh no, you know, I can't do it. And then I did it, and that was the best thing I could do. And I got the job there. Actually turns out to be probably one of the best jobs I had in the bank. So, but yeah, that was probably something I remember.
And I think that's really common for women, right? As we look at a job description, if we can't do all of it, we don't apply.
Yeah.
So it took you a little bit of time to listen to the advice, but you did take it eventually, and it turned out well.
It turns out well, yeah.
Brilliant. One of the things I like to ask the interviewees, the guests, to do is set our listeners a little bit of a challenge. So if you were going to set someone, our listeners, a personal challenge, something that will give them a little bit of a challenge, do something a bit different, what would you set them as a challenge from everything you've learned?
So one thing I've learned, and especially kind of moving out from, if you want the corporate cushioning and support that you get, is when you move out, you're alone and you're only kind of supported by the network you do. And I think as human beings, we're very transactional at time, and we expect to do something for someone else. And what I've learned, and I was very fortunate to find quite a few people, because of previous relationship, or maybe they said I helped them in the past, they've helped not wanting anything in return.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And one of my friends, we were out running, and she helped me with something, and I said, how can I help you? And she said, I don't need anything at the moment, but go and help someone else. So I think is that, and for me, I was like, actually, this is really good. You don't need to change the world. Change the world is really difficult, and we don't all need to change the world. Otherwise, I think the Orange Band is doing enough to try and change the whole world. One of the advice is, have a think, have you been helped by someone in some form and shape? And is there someone in your network that might have reached out or might not have reached out, or you think you can help? Try and do that. And kind of set the same challenge. And I think that's a way to create a good ecosystem, I think.
What an amazing challenge. I think that's so powerful, of kind of someone has helped you. So pay it forward to somebody else who might need your help that you may not have thought about, you know, because we're all busy, right? And taking time out to help other people. And it's great. It's so satisfying, and it feels good when we do it. But actually, and I'm a great believer in asking other people. One of the first questions I ask people and entrepreneurs when I meet them is, tell me about your business. How can I help? Like, how could I connect you? But actually, when you've helped someone or they've helped you, taking that and feeding it forward to someone else, I think is incredibly powerful. So what a great challenge. So hopefully, Barbara, we'll get some people coming back and sharing, some listeners sharing that they've taken that challenge and give us some feedback on it and tell us their stories. So I don't know how we've got here, but we are at the final question. So as you know, we're called The Beginner's Guide to Being a Grown-Up. And I think you said at the beginning, you still feel 18. And I think that's quite a common theme that most people I interview are like, grown up? I'm not a grown up. But obviously you've had a really interesting career, and you've lived in different places in the world, had different experiences in different languages, which I'm always very jealous of because I have no language skill. If you were going to put a single piece of advice into the guide, what would that piece of advice be?
Trust your gut and go for it. And I think too many of us just overthink it. And we used to do it, or what about if this happened, and what about if, and what about?
Yeah.
Nobody knows the what about, so just go for it. And the worst things that can happen, you learn something about yourself that you can or you can't do, so you can do something about it. Or you can actually succeed and help someone else.
Yeah. And I love that. And this is what I love about you is, you know, go be successful because you can then help someone else is just very much who you are.
Yes.
It's not just about being successful. It's if I'm successful, I can help other people be successful. If someone helps me, then I can then go help someone else.
Help someone else.
Barbara, I know is very much your ethos, and I'm sure the ethos of the business that you run as well. Thank you so much for being interviewed today, Barbara. I really love learning a little bit more about your story, about the things that have formed you, the little failures and the learns and the advice that you've taken and ignored, and getting to the point where you can, you know, pay it forward, love the challenge, and just give it a go. I think, you know, just go for it. It's a great piece of advice to go into the guide.
Well, and thank you, because I know you're doing this as a passion project, and I think, you know, you are connecting many dots, and I think, you know, it's great. We have a lot of people in commons and we're all helping each other, and I think that's fantastic.
Yeah, brilliant. Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode of A Beginner's Guide to Being a Grown Up with Barbara Gottardi. Please do like, subscribe or follow wherever you listen to us. It really does help. Next week, we'll be interviewing Michelle Pugh-Perry de Klerk, who's the CEO and founder of the Women's Chapter, while she tells us about her journey through adulthood. In the meantime, enjoy being a grown-up.